That's how it started.
Say good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Miss Kathy. So you can call me Miss Kathy if you have a question. Raise your hand.
Just like in usual classes.
What do we say? Raise your hand. Yes, ma'am.
Just like in usual classes.
Just like in usual classes. That's exactly right. But today, hopefully, we're going to have a fun time learning about one very special pollinator, and that's the honeybee.
I can't see.
You can't see? Let's see if I can move a little bit. How's that?
Yes, now I can see.
Now you can see? Okay. So, I bet you guys know a lot about honeybees already. So who can tell me what the difference is between wasps and honeybees? What do you already know?
Wasps. Some wasps are even bigger than bees.
Yes, some wasps.
I
are
saw
bigger
one
than bees.
ginormous wasp.
Really? Yes, ma'am.
Wasps can sting a lot, and bees can only sting one time.
You are very,
Well,
very
honeybees
smart.
can
She
sting
said
one
wasps can sting many times and honeybees can only sting once. Do me a favor, put your arm out like this and pull on your skin a little bit. See how it's stretchy? So the reason a honeybee can only sting you one time, and she does not want to, is when she feels like she's in trouble or her sisters are in trouble. And because her stinger has hooks in it, when she stings you and tries to fly away, your skin holds on to the stinger and she flies away and she's going to die. Because part of her gets torn out of her tummy. So bees do not want to sting you. So that's a really important difference between wasps and bees.
So I guess I've been stung by a honeybee before, because once I was running around barefoot and I stepped on something sharp and it looks like a stinger when I picked my foot up.
Really?
So then I guess I stepped on a honeybee because the stinger was still there.
You might be. And that was an accident, right? So she didn't want to sting you, but she said, oh my gosh, here comes
Or maybe I've also just thought since that happened, like she didn't see me and she was on the flower and then I accidentally stepped on her.
Exactly.
And she didn't even mean to sting me. She probably would have just fallen away.
She would have.
Because I wasn't doing anything to her.
That's right.
Because I didn't see her.
That's right. So some other things about wasps and honeybees. So wasps, do you see how it's all smooth and shiny?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see the bee?
Mm-hmm. So our honeybees
She's full of hair.
So our only
She even has hairs on her eyes. Yes, ma'am.
So only honeybees are pollinators because the fuzzy is what picks up the pollen, isn't it?
You're so smart. This is half of what we're going to talk about today. So wasps actually do pollinate, but they're very different. They have yellow legs, they have long skinny
pollinate with
wings,
their wings?
and bees, most of the time you only see 2 wings, but bees really have 4 wings. And they fold them back when they're in the hive, and when they go to fly, have anybody had Velcro shoes? Maybe when they were a little kid, they had Velcro.
I'm wearing Velcro right now.
Ah, they're very good. So
I don't have any.
you hear those hooks? So the bee's front wing grabs onto their back wing, just like Velcro, and it makes a big surface for them to fly. So bees have 4 wings. So let's talk about some things that you might not know about honeybees. So, how many times do you think a honeybee's wings beat every second?
8.
Anybody have a guess?
1,000,000.
1,000,000. What's your guess?
100?
100. It's a pretty good guess. So a honeybee's wings beat 200 times a second.
Whoa!
A
I wouldn't know
second.
it.
So that's why you hear the buzzing sound when they come flying past you, because it's the air moving
So
over
that's
the wings.
not them doing it on purpose, it's their wings.
Exactly.
Otherwise they wouldn't be flying in the air.
Exactly. So how much honey do you think one bee will make in her whole life?
1,000?
1,000 gallons or, 1,000 gallons. Mm-hmm.
Well, it depends. If they sting, it'll be a shorter amount.
They won't be here anymore.
So that question is like
500 gallons.
500 gallons. Well, guess what? A honeybee will make, hold up your little finger and look at your little fingernail. That's how much honey one bee makes in her whole lifetime. So when we put a bunch of honey on our peanut butter sandwiches, or we put a bunch of honey into our tea,
That's like
That's
almost a
like-
million bees.
it's like 24 bees work their whole lives to give you that honey. So just make sure that we say thank you to the bees. And now we know why honey is expensive, because it takes a lot of bees to make the honey in the stores.
How do
So how many people know how many queen bees are in a colony? So,
one?
one queen. Very good.
Just
You
like
know a
ants.
lot about pollinators. Exactly. So a queen is the only bee in the hive that can lay eggs to make new bees. So how many eggs a day do you think the queen bee can lay?
5,000.
5,000. And she'd be very busy every day, wouldn't she? Well, basically, a honey queen will lay almost 2,000 eggs a day. And she does that in the middle of the spring and summer, where she needs a lot of workers to go out and get the nectar and the pollen. And so she can do those 2,000 eggs a day. That's 5 or 6 every minute for her whole life. So she's a very busy, busy girl. So inside the hive, I brought you a little hive that I have down here. It's called a nucleus hive.
Are there any bees in it?
No, there's no bees in it. But every beehive has a hard cover like this for the weather.
Is there anything in there?
Show you this.
Are you gonna let like 2 people come up at a time?
And then there's an inner cover that helps the bees keep warm. And they can play around in this hole on top, and I can feed them through the hole. And inside this box, there will be frames like this. And we can pass this around. One thing that I ask you is, it's
And then
really
put honey.
Right.
Honey.
So it's really tempting to poke your finger in there. But please don't, because my bees work really hard to make this, okay? So
Will bees
these
make
frames
that?
will be inside this box.
How do bees make frames?
And do you see, well, we're gonna learn it. Do you see, these are all bees covering the frame. And these are the frames that are in the box. And this isn't mean, but it could be mean. So each of these frames are positioned 3/8 of an inch apart. So not even a whole inch. And you know why? Because the bees figured out that that's the distance that 2 of them can work side by side, making this comb. So let's pass this around. Remember, don't poke your finger in, please.
But
Thank
can
you.
you feel the top?
You can feel it very gently, okay?
Wait, there's some cracks right here.
Yeah, but please don't make any more. So, bees build 6-sided cells on the comb. Like, what, do you know of anything else that has 6 sides? You see it every day?
6 sides that you see every day.
Yes, anybody have a guess? How about a stop sign? So that's the size of the cell, and they're very, very smart, because in those cells they can either, depending on their needs, you can come on up and put it in the box there. Depending on their needs, they can put eggs in there, they can put food in there, or they can put honey in there. So it's like having an apartment building. So we need more apartment buildings for families, or we need more apartment buildings for
I've
other
seen
people.
I've seen a not magic tree house, but a magic school does it before. And what they do is they put pollen in, and then they stir it around, and it makes honey.
That's almost right. We'll talk a little bit more about it. But see this little bee here?
They stir it around.
The bees, when they're ready to emerge, they chew their way out of the honeycomb. And they can put all those things that we talked about. They also glue up the entire spirit. They glue the inside of their box with something called propolis. Hi, bud. And propolis is like having duct tape. So if they've got holes in there, or they've got other things and they don't want anybody to come in, or the wind, they can fill it up with what's called propolis too. So, it's time to make a guess. How many bees do you you think are in a hive, remember the hives are a couple of boxes high, when they're going to gather honey. So this is just a guess, so everybody get in your mind the number that you think. It's not that. It's not that number.
I think
It's not that number. Guess what?
I think it's 100.
So there can be 80 to 100,000 bees in one beehive, and that's just like the population. That's more than everybody who lives in Ellicott City. So that'd be like if we put everybody that lives in Ellicott City in the library. Wouldn't that be tight? When we would have barely room to stand. But that's the way the bees live, side by side. We weren't going to talk about that one today. So honeybees they don't get to fly in the wintertime, right? And they're cold-blooded, so they can't be warm out in the snow, and they can't put on snow jackets like you guys can, or mittens or gloves or boots. So in the wintertime,
Plus there aren't any
they
flowers.
make a big, they're right, no flowers. So they make a big ball on the inside of the hive to stay warm, and they take turns being on the outside, because right in the center of the ball, the queen has a few number of babies that she's taking care of, and no matter how cold it is outside, inside the hive has to be 94 degrees. That's like a warm summer day, isn't it? Like a really hot summer day. So just think, when it's snowy like this, inside the hive, those little bee girls are working very, very hard to keep those few babies that they need to start into the springtime warm. So, who lives in a beehive? There's 3 kinds of bees. A drone, which are the boy bees, workers, which are the girl bees, and one queen, who's a smart boy in the back, so we can only one of those. And queens and workers are both girls. Now I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is, actually, maybe that's kind of the bad news, but all of the work done in the hive, taking care of the babies, laying the eggs, feeding the babies, capping the babies, cleaning the hive, guarding the hive from foreigners who want to get inside and get their honey, is all done by girls. You boy bees have a very important job to do.
Taking care of the baby?
They actually fly around and they help the queen make new bees. So that's their only job. And what they do most of the time in the hive is eat. That's all they do. And so in the fall, when the hive gets small, they chuck the boy bees out in the wintertime because they know they're going to make more boy bees in the springtime. So do you see the difference in the size of the boy bees? Are big. They're big and they're tough because their job is to fly and catch the queen when she goes on her mating flights. And their eyes, do you see how big their eyes are? So they can find her when she flies out of the hive. They have supervision that they can go find those bees. That's a lot of words that just told you exactly what I told you. So bees, remember we said have 4 wings, even though they look like they only have 2. They have, how many eyes do you think a bee has? 4?
8?
8?
A million.
A million eyes? Where would she even put a million eyes?
Some eyes are
It's a
teeny tiny.
Well, the answer is 5. They have the 2 big eyes up front so that they can go find flowers and navigate. And then they have 3 little teeny eyes right on the top of their head. And that helps them see when it's cloudy outside how to get home, because they navigate using the sun. And so here's how a bee develops. The queen lays an egg in the bottom of one of those cells we saw. Workers feed the little larvae. They get very big. And then another bee comes by and puts a little wax cap on the top, like we saw the little bee chewing out of the cell. And then they spin a cocoon inside and they make a pupa, and then they chew their way out as an adult bee. And so different bees mature in different period of time. But think about this. A larva increases its weight by 900 times before it gets capped. That means those busy girl nurse bees have to feed that baby 1,500 times a day.
What?
Talk about being busy as a bee, right? And that's over 10,000 visits of a larva before they hatch into a bee. So that would be, let's say you're a little baby, you were born 6 pounds. By that time your mommy would put a cap on the top of you, you would weigh 2,500 pounds. That's amazing. That's a lot of feeding.
How do bees weigh that much? How do bees weigh more than humans if they're smaller?
Well, that's just an example. If a bee was a human and a bee started out at 6 pounds, by the time they put the wax caps on, they'd weigh as much as a car. Can you imagine that?
I thought that was like real life.
Oh,
like,
no, not really. No babies like
but
that.
But that would be so crazy if
That
that was
would be
actually
crazy. So bees, like people, start off with easy jobs to do, and then they get a little bit harder. So for example, if your mom told you today, go to the grocery store, shop for our dinner, come home, cook it on the stove and put it on the table, and by the way, drive the car. Could you do that today? No, but what jobs do you do at home right now?
Sometimes I help my mom in the kitchen, like she tells me what to do when I do it.
Absolutely.
I like doing
Did you do a job at home?
Lay off the door.
That's right. So bees are the same way. And guess what the first job a bee does when they emerge?
Get honey?
They have to clean their room
What?
and get it ready for the next baby. That is the very first job. After that, they take care of babies and feed them.
What?
They fan the hive to keep the
Babies
temperature.
take care of babies?
Yep, for new babies, feed the new babies, and that's because they're young and they can take a lot of food. And then they make wax for a while, and then they guard the hive, and then they graduate to be foragers. And those are the bees that you see flying around.
And then if some of them is the queen bee, one of them becomes the queen bee, and the others bite their wings off her.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
I read that
That's
in the book.
exactly true, but
Wait, no, that's
remember to
ants.
raise your hand.
That's ants.
And then the foragers are at the end of their life cycle, and do you know why a bee dies at the end of her lifetime? She wears her wings out. She works so hard to bring food back to the hive that she actually wears out her wings. So she works hard her whole life. So we're not going to see this video today, but how do you think bees talk to each other in the hive and they know where the flowers are? And it's dark in the hive, remember? Dark and crowded. How do they do that?
Try a dance.
They do a waggle dance, and they also, put your hands up like this, they have 2 antennae. And do you know what the antennae do? They're their noses. So imagine your nose being this big, and your left nose smells differently things than your right nose. So if there's flowers on your right side, and your nose smells the flowers over here, the left side doesn't smell it as well, so the bee knows, ooh, over here is where the flowers are. So bees smell and touch each other inside the hive.
And then are
And
they
they
able
do
to
the
put their
waggle dance.
antenna that way to make sure they're going the right way?
No, they're still smelling while they're flying, because they need to make sure they know what else is around. I know only the 20 minutes, so. 8 minutes more? Okay, good. All right, so that's how the bees do it, and you've heard of the waggle dance. The bees know where the sun is. They come inside the hive, and they tell their sisters by walking and waggling how far the flowers are and what direction to fly outside of the hive. Isn't that amazing? So let's see what else. Oh, bees see colors differently than we do. So they can see what's called ultraviolet light. Our eyes can't see that. So this is us on this side, and what do we see? We see a yellow dandelion, right?
They stick.
They see the dandelion look like this. And why do you think that might be?
Is the pink the pollen?
Makes you red. Yeah.
Because we have like teeth.
They have bee vision eyes, but guess what? Flowers have developed in a way that they can tell the bees, I have nectar, I have pollen, and it's right here. So the flowers are out there waving around, and the flowers that do the best job to gather the bee have like a target right in the center that the bees come to. And so those are the most successful flowers when honeybees are around because they understood how bees could see them.
That would be cool.
And we already talked about this a little bit. Why are bees so hairy?
Young lady over here has her.
I want to tell you two things.
Okay.
One is the bee's so hairy because it has like, sometimes it doesn't know what it's touching. So like the hair like helps it feel what it is touching.
That's a good.
Once I watched a show and the queen bee's daughter, she laid her eggs in one of the things, and then the mother came up to where she laid her egg, and then she ate her egg.
Oh, well, honeybees don't really do that.
I know.
But bees are hairy because they can attract pollen. So when a bee, who's ever rubbed their feet across the carpet in the wintertime and went to touch their brother or their sister and there was that shock? Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
Or rub a balloon and you kind of get a spark or your hair stands out like this? So that's what happens when a bee flies. It's negatively charged, and when a bee lands on a flower, that pollen is positively charged and it jumps on the bee. And the bee even has hair on her eyes, and so her front feet have something called antenna and eye cleaners to keep the pollen off of her eyes so she can see. And then she moves that pollen to her back legs and takes it back to the hive. So one thing, if you learn one thing today that's really important, 1 out of every 3 things we like to eat is dependent on honeybees to pollinate. So bees are so very important for the rest of the world to be able to have a lot of food to produce. And remember, bees are not the only pollinators, although I'm talking a lot about bees today. So birds and bats and flies. And do you know that in the state of Maryland, we have 1,400 different kinds of native bees. But they're tiny and you don't always see them very much and they don't live in big groups. And humans too. So this is a good slide I like. This is, if we have pollinators, we go to the store, look at all these good vegetables and fruits that we can pick from, right? If we didn't have bees, a big bunch of that stuff would be gone. We wouldn't have it to have us. So the bees are very hard as pollinators. So here's what a beekeeper does. I take care of the bees in the hive. I make sure they're healthy. I make sure they don't have any pests. Sometimes beekeepers will mark a queen so that it's easy to see. Because remember, we said there were 80,000 bees in a big bee colony, and I have to make sure that I can find one very important bee. So if she's marked, it helps a little bit. And we use smoke as beekeepers because remember we said here's these big bee noses and they can communicate and smell very well. So if I'm in the colony and I want the bees to calm down and not talk to each other so much, I give them a little bit of smoke on the top. And then they're like, oh, well, we can't really talk to each other right now. Okay, we'll go back to working. So it calms the bees down. So that's how we use a smoker. And let's see, we can do a bunch of things as a beekeeper. And so one thing I want to leave you guys with, this is towards the end of my talk, and then we'll have a taste of the honey and you can go to your next station, okay? This looks like everybody's yard that everybody wants in Ellicott City, right? Nice and green, the grass is beautiful, no weeds, it looks great, we can play ball on it. But do you know what a bee sees when they fly over yards that look like this? They see that. What? There is nothing for me to eat here. I can't even spend my time here because there's no flowers, there's no
Well, yeah, because
weeds.
when you cut because some leaves look like flowers and then they actually have pollen.
Yes, they do, they have pollen and nectar. So
But
that's
grass has nothing
important.
except for dew.
Exactly. So if we want our bees to survive, we have things we can do to help them. Okay? So even you guys at your age can do things to help the bees.
I can
Because
tell
remember
my-
how important they are to
I can tell my dad not to cut leaves down.
Yeah! So in the springtime, the first flower that comes up very early for the bees, remember they have to get going and get that nectar right as the snow is leaving us, are dandelions. So don't pick the dandelions, let the bees have them for food. And don't spray for mosquitoes. Do you think if you spray for mosquitoes that just kills the mosquitoes and nothing else? No, it kills bees and butterflies and all kinds of good insects that we need. So share what you've learned today. It's really important. Tell your moms, tell your dads what you've learned about bees and how important they are and what we can do. And plant native flowers and shrubs and trees. Sometimes we plant plants because we think they're really pretty looking and they're bright, but they don't have any nectar in them for the bees. Do you know those big yellow forsythia bushes that look so pretty in the spring and they're all bright yellow?
Let me guess, no pollen.
No nectar, no pollen. The bees can't use it. So
Which
that's
is, even though some things are pretty, like sometimes I see butterflies over by some of my uncle's bushes. That means that the bushes are good and that they have pollen. And there's one in Natalie's yard I've seen, like it's purple and it looks like it has little sections.
yeah.
Those are good because sometimes I see butterflies.
Exactly. So when you decide to put in
And like it
plants,
looks like black-eyed Susans.
ask the
too,
people
and
you're buying the
sunflowers.
plants from if they're native plants and if they're good for pollinators. So you can do that. And then you can also create a pollinator watering station in your own backyard. So bees need water because they use it to cool down the hive and they get thirsty when they fly sometimes. And what they need is a shallow pan and you put some rocks in here so the bees don't drown. And you just fill it up with water and make sure it's full. And you may see butterflies come to take a drink. You may see bees come to take a drink, but it's healthy. And remember, bees fly up to 6 miles a day to get their food, our little tiny bees. So the more you can give them flowers in your yard and watering stations like this, the more you'll be able to help. So what I'd like to do is show you guys, you can come up and see this stuff later, but this is the way bees build comb in a tree, in a hollow of a tree. So do you see the spacing? And the really cool thing is when you come up and you can take a look at this, the hexagons we talked about, they don't line up directly. They're lined up side by side on both sides, and because that makes the comb stronger. So the bees are really smart. And then we have a honey sieve and some candles that I made from beeswax. And
Are we gonna make candles?
I don't think so, but you've got it. You've got a.
Are we gonna play with beeswax?
All right. Okay. So Miss Ann said, when you finish all of your activities, you can come back, and the last thing you'll do is get to taste some honey. Okay? All right.